charming you are sure to meet. Those girls, dear girls, those lovely seaside girls. With sticks they steer and promenade the pier to give the boys a treat. In piqué silks and lace, they tip you quite a playful wink. It always is the case. You seldom stop to think. You fall in love, of course, upon the spot, but not with one girl, always with the lot. Those girls, those lovely seaside girls, all dimples, smiles, and curls. Your head, it simply whirls. They look alright, complexions pink and white. They've diamond rings and dainty feet, golden hair from Regent Street, lace and grace and lots of face, those pretty little seaside girls.
It is June the 16th, 1904. Leopold Bloom begins his day thinking of breakfast. He asks his wife Molly if she wants him to buy anything for her. She doesn't. He walks a few blocks to the kosher pork butcher to buy a kidney for his breakfast. He returns home.
2 letters and a card lay on the hall floor. He stooped and gathered them.
Mrs. Marion Bloom.
His quickened heart slowed at once.
Bold hand.
Poldy!
Entering the bedroom, he half closed his eyes and walked through warm yellow twilight towards her tousled head.
Who are the letters for?
He looked at them.
Mullingar. Millie. A letter from me, from Millie, and a card to you, and a letter for you.
He laid her card and letter on the twill bedspread near the curve of her knees.
Do you want the blind up?
Letting the blind up by gentle tugs halfway, his backward eye saw her glance at the letter and took it under her pillow.
That do?
She was reading the card propped up on her elbow.
She got the things.
He waited till she had laid the card aside and curled herself back slowly with a snug sigh.
Here. What does that mean? Sorry. Hurry up with the tea, I'm parched.
The kettle's boiling.
But he delayed to clear the chair. Her striped petticoat tossed soiled linen and lifted all in an armful on the foot of the bed. As he went down the kitchen stairs, she called,
Poldy!
What?
Scald the teapot!
On the boil, sure enough.
A plume of steam from the spout. He scalded and rinsed out the teapot and put in 4 full spoons of tea, tilting the kettle, then to let the water flow in. Having set it to draw, he took off the kettle, crushed the pan flat on the live coals, and watched the lump of butter slide and melt. While he unwrapped the kidney, the cat mewed hungrily against them. Meow.
Give her too much meat, she won't mouse. Say they won't eat pork. Kosher. Here.
He let the blood-smeared paper fall to her and dropped the kidney amid the sizzling butter sauce.
Pepper.
He sprinkled it, threw his fingers ring-wise from the chipped egg cup. Then he slid open his letter, glancing down the page and over.
Thanks, New Tam, Mr. Coughlin, Loch Old Picnic, young student. Blazes boiling seaside girls.
The tea was drawn. He filled his own moustache cup.
Sham Crown Derby. Silly Millie's birthday gift. Only 5 she was then. No, wait. 4. I gave her the ambroid necklace she broke. Putting pieces of folded brown paper in the letterbox for her.
He prodded a fork into the kidney and slapped it over, then fitted the teapot on the tray. Its hump bumped as he took it up.
Everything on it? Bread and butter, 4. Sugar, spoon. Her cream, yes.
He carried it upstairs, his thumb hooked in the teapot handle. Nudging the door open with his knee, he carried the tray in and set it on the chair by the bedhead.
What a time you were.
She set the brasses jingling as she raised herself briskly, an elbow on the pillow. He looked calmly down on her bulk and between her large, soft boobs, sloping within her nightdress like a she-goat's udder. The warmth of her couched body rose on the air, mingling with the fragrance of the tea she poured. A strip of torn envelope peeped from under the dimpled pillow. In the act of going, he stayed to straighten the bedspread.
Who was the letter from? Bold hand. Marion.
Oh, Boylan. He's bringing the programme.
What are you singing?
La Chi Darem with J.C. Doyle and Love's Old Sweet Song.
Her full lips, drinking, smiled. She doubled a slice of bread into her mouth. Following the pointing of her finger, he took up a leg of her soiled drawers from the bed. No? Then a twisted grey garter looped around a stocking, rumpled, shiny sole.
No, that book.
Other stocking. Her petticoat.
Must have fell down.
He felt here and there.
Voglio e non vorrei. Wonder if she pronounces that right. Voglio. Not in the bed. Must have slid down.
He stooped and lifted the valance. The book, fallen, sprawled against the bulge of the orange-keyed chamber pot.
Show here. I put a mark on it. There's a word I want to ask you.
She swallowed a draught of tea from her cup, held by knot handle, and having wiped her fingers smartly on the blanket, began to search the text with a hairpin till she reached the word.
Here. What does that mean?
He leaned downward and read near her polished thumbnail.
Metempsychosis.
Yes. Who's he when he's at home?
Metempsychosis. It's Greek, from the Greek. It means the transmigration of souls.
Oh, rocks. Tell us in plain words.
He smiled, glancing askance at her mocking eyes. He turned over the smudged pages.
Ruby, the pride of the ring. Hello. Illustration. Fierce Italian with a carriage whip. Must be Ruby, pride of the... On the floor. Naked. Did you finish it?
Yes. There's nothing smutty in it. Is she in love with the first fella all the time?
Never read it. Do you want another?
Yes. Get me another of Paul de Cox. Lovely name he has.
She poured more tea into her cup, watching it flow sideways.
Now, some people believe that we go on living in another body after death, that we lived before. They call it reincarnation. That we all lived before on the earth thousands of years ago, or some other planet. They say we've forgotten it. Some say they remembered their past lives. Metempsychosis is what the ancient Greeks called it. They used to believe you could be changed into an animal or a tree, for instance. What they called nymphs, for example.
Her spoon ceased to stir up the sugar. She gazed straight before her, inhaling through her arched nostrils.
There's a smell of burn. Did you leave something on the fire?
Me kidney!
La ci darem la mano, la mi dirai di sì. Vedi non è lontano, partiam ben mio da qui.
Vorrei e non vorrei, mi trema in bocca il cor. Felice ne sarei, ma può bullarmi ancora
Vieni mio bel diletto,
mi fa pietà masetto.
io cangerò tua sorte.
Questo non son più
ben mio da qui.
Popularmi ancora.
Vieni mio bel letto, io cangerò tua sorte.
Non son più forte, non son più forte.
Andiam, andiam. Andiam, andiam mio bene, a ristorar le pene d'un innocente amor. Andiam, andiam mio bene, a ristorar le pene d'un innocente amor. Andiam. Andiam, andiam mio bene, andiam, le pene a ristorar d'un innocente amor.
Thank you to all my friends and relatives who are here tonight. Good evening and welcome to this celebration of the 106th anniversary of Bloomsday and to the first Bloomsday at the Hammer. And I suppose, based on the crowd tonight, we might even say the first annual Bloomsday at the Hammer. Okay. Taking one Bloomsday at a time, I'd like to introduce these wonderful performers. We're all very fortunate to have their presence tonight. The actors, Barbara Dowling. James Lancaster. Johnny O'Callahan. John Rafter Lee. The singers, Lauren Edwards. Doug Carpenter. Brian View. And our music director, Neil Stolberg. Just mention their names now and thank them so much for being here, but their bios or their accomplishments far exceed the space that we were allotted in the program. So you'll just have to read some brief bios about them. Or, if you're more interested, come out and greet them on the patio after the performance. So let us proceed.
As Leopold Bloom travels around Dublin during the day, he usually tries to avoid contact with other Dubliners. But old friends turn up. It is midday, and in this case, it's Josie Breen, who Bloom knew and even dated before he and Molly married. He's daydreaming about Molly, as he does much of the day, and in particular about a sexual moment when...
Oh, Mr. Bloom, how do you do?
Oh, how do you do, Mrs. Breen?
No use complaining. How's Molly these times? Haven't seen her for ages.
In the pink? Millie has a position down in Mullingar, you know.
Go away. Isn't that grand for her?
Yes, in a photographer's there. Getting on like a house on fire. How are all your charges?
All on the baker's list.
How many has she? No other in sight.
You're in black, I see. You have
No. Just come from a funeral. Going to crop up all day, I foresee. Who's dead? When and what did he die of? Turn up like a bad penny.
Oh, dear me. I hope it wasn't any near relation.
May as well get her sympathy. Dignam, old friend of mine. Died quite suddenly, poor fellow. Heart trouble.
Sad to lose the old friends.
Mrs. Breen's woman eyes said melancholily.
Now that's quite enough about that. Just quietly, husband. And your lord and master?
Mrs. Breen turned up her 2 large eyes.
Hasn't lost them anyhow.
Oh, don't be talking. He's a caution to rattlesnakes. He's in there now with his law books, finding out about the law of libel. He has me heart scalded. Wait till I show you.
Opening her handbag. Chipped leather. Rummaging. What is she looking for?
There must be a new moon out. He's always bad then. Do you know what he did last night?
Her hand ceased to rummage. Her eyes fixed themselves on him, wide in alarm, yet smiling.
What? Let her speak. Look straight in her eyes. I believe you. Trust me.
Woke me up in the night. Dream he had. Nightmare. Said the ace of spades was walking up the stairs.
The ace of spades?
She took a folded postcard from her handbag.
Read that. He got that this morning.
What is it? UP?
UP, up. Someone taking a rise out of him. Oh, it's a great shame for them, whoever he is.
Indeed it is.
She took back the card, sighing.
And now he's going round to Mr. Menton's office. He's going to take an action for £10,000, he says.
She folded the card into her untidy bag and snapped the catch.
Same blue serge dress she had 2 years ago. The nap bleaching. Seen its best days. Wispish hair over her ears. And that dowdy toque. 3 old grapes to take the harm out of it. Shabby genteel. She used to be a tasty dresser. Lines around her mouth. Only a year or so older than Molly. Change the subject. Do you ever see anything of Mrs. Beaufoy?
Mina Purefoy.
Yes.
I just called to ask her on the way in. Is she over it? She's in the Lion Inn Hospital in Hollis Street. Dr. Horn got her in. She's 3 days bad now.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes, and a house full of kids at home. It's a very stiff birth, the nurse told me.
His heavy, pitying gaze absorbed her news. His tongue clacked in compassion.
Sorry to hear that. Poor thing. 3 days. It's terrible for her.
Mrs. Breen nodded.
She was taken very bad on a Tuesday.
Mr. Bloom touched her funny bone gently, warning her.
Oh, mind, let this man pass.
A bony form strode along the curbstone from the river, staring with a rapt gaze into the sunlight through a heavy stringed glass. Tight as a skull piece, a tiny hat gripped his head. From his arm, a folded dust coat, a stick and an umbrella dangled to his stride.
Watch him. He always walks outside the lampposts. Watch.
Who is he, if it's a fair question? Is he Dotty?
His name is Cashel Boyle, O'Connor, Fitzmaurice, Tisdall, Farrell. Watch.
Oh, he has enough of them. Oh, Janice will be like that one of these days.
She broke off suddenly.
Oh, there he is. Oh, I must go after him. Goodbye. Remember me to Molly, won't you?
I will.
He watched her dodge through passers towards the shop fronts. Dennis Breen, in skimpy frock coat and blue canvas shoes, shuffled out of Harrison's, hugging 2 heavy tomes to his ribs. He suffered her to overtake him without surprise and thrust his dull grey beard towards her, his loose jaw wagging as he spoke earnestly.
Meshuggah. Off his chump.
It is about 5 p.m., a time when many Dubliners gather in pubs. This is Barney Kiernan's pub, and the most dominant figure there is known as the Citizen, the spirited nationalist. Bloom, a non-drinker, is only there to meet his friend Martin Cunningham before they pay a visit to Paddy Digname's widow. By the way, the narrator of this chapter is an unreliable drunk. We hear first from the Citizen.
The strangers. Our own fault. We let them come in. We brought them in. The adulteress and her paramour brought the Saxon robbers here.
And Bloom let none to be awfully deeply interested in nothing, a spider's web in the corner behind the battle, and the Citizen scowling after him and the old dog at his feet looking up to know who to bite and when.
It's on the march. To hell with the bloody brutal Sassenachs and their patois. To hell with them. The curse of a good-for-nothing god lies sideways on the bloody tick-lug sons of whores gets. No music and no art and no literature worthy of the name. Any civilization they have stole from us. Tongue-tied sons of bastards ghosts.
Some people can see the mote in others' eyes, but they can't see the beam in their own.
Save them that joined Asha Galway and the chieftain Elma Kildare with a 40-foot ball and an acre of foliage. Save the trees of Ireland for the future men of Ireland on the fair hills of Eire. Oh!
Bloom was talking and talking with John Wise, and he quite excited with his dun-duckety mud-coloured mug on him and his old plum eyes rolling about.
Persecution. All the history of the world is full of it. Perpetuating national hatred among nations.
But do you know what a nation means, says John Wise.
Yes.
What is it, says John Wise.
A nation. A nation is the same people living in the same place.
By God then, says Ned laughing. If that's so, I'm a nation, for I'm living in the same place for the past 5 years. So, of course, everyone had to laugh at Bloom, and says he, trying to muck out of it.
Are also living in different places.
That covers my case, says Joe.
Well, what is your nation, if I may ask?
Ireland. And I was born here, Ireland.
The Citizen said nothing, only cleared the spit out of his gullet, and gob, he spat a red bank oyster out, right out of him in the corner.
And I belong to a race too, that is hated and persecuted. Also now, this very moment, this very instant.
God, he near burnt his fingers with the butt of his old cigar.
Robbed, plundered, insulted, persecuted, taking what belongs to us by right. At this very moment, sold by auction in Morocco like slaves or cattle.
Are you talking about the New Jerusalem?
I'm talking about injustice.
Right, says John Wise. Stand up to it then with force, like men.
That's no use. Force, hatred, history, all that. That's not life for men and women. Insult and hatred. And everybody knows that it's the very opposite of that is really life.
What? Says Alf.
Love. I mean, the opposite of hatred. I must go now. Just round the court a moment to see if Martin's there. If he comes in, just say I'll be back in a second. Just a moment.
Who's hindering you?
And off he pops like grease lightning.
A new apostle to the Gentiles. Universal love?
Sure enough, the castle car drove up with Martin on it and Jack Power with them and a fella named Crofton, pensioner out of the Collector General's, an Orangeman. So in comes Martin, asking where was Bloom. Where is he? Says Lenihan, defrauding widows and orphans. And after all, says John Wise, why can't a Jew love his country like the next fella? Why not? Says JJ, when he's quite sure which country it is. Is he a Jew or a Gentile or a Holy Roman or a Swaddler or what the hell is he, says Ned. Or who is he? No offence, Crofton. He's a perverted Jew, says Martin, from a place in Hungary, and it was he drew up all the plans according to the Hungarian system. We know that in the castle.
That's the new Messiah for Ireland. Island of saints and sages.
Well, they're still waiting for their Redeemer, says Martin. For that matter, we are too. Yes, says JJ, and every man that's born, they think it may be their Messiah. And every Jew is in a tall state of excitement, I believe, till he knows if he's a father or a mother. Expecting every moment will be his next, says Lenehan.
Do you call that a man?
I wonder did he ever put it out of sight, says Joe. Well, there were 2 children born anyhow, says Jack Power.
And who does he suspect?
Charity to the neighbour, says Martin. But where is he? We can't wait. I was just looking around to see who the happy thought would strike, when be damned, but in he comes again, letting on to be in a hell of a hurry.
I was just round the courthouse looking for you. I hope I'm not holding you.
No, says Martin, we're ready. Courthouse my eye, and your pockets hanging down with gold and silver. Main bloody scut. Stand us a drink itself, devil a sweet fear. There's a Jew for you, all for number 1. Cute as a shithouse rat, 100 to 5.
Don't tell anyone.
I beg your pardon?
Come on, boys, says Martin, seeing it was looking blue. Come along now.
Don't tell anyone. It's a secret.
And the bloody dog woke up and lets a growl. Bye-bye all, says Martin, and he got them out as quick as he could. Jack Power and Croftoner, whatever you call him, and him in the middle of them, letting on to be all at sea, and up with them on the bloody jaunting car. Off with you, says Martin to the Jarvey, but begob, I was just lowering the heel of the point when I saw the citizen getting up to waddle to the door, puffing and blowing with the dropsy, and he cursing the curse of Cromwell on him, bell, book and candle in Irish, spitting and spatting out of him, and Joe and little Alf around him like a leprechaun, trying to pacify him.
Let me alone!
And begob, he got as far as the door, and they holding him, and he bawls out of them.
3 cheers for Israel!
And all the ragamuffins and sluts of the nation round the door, and Martin telling the Jarvey to drive ahead, and the citizen bawling, and Alf and Joe at him to whisht, and he on his high horse about the Jews and the loafers, calling for a speech, and Jack Power trying to get him to sit down on the car and hold his bloody jaw, and the loafer with the patch over his eye starts singing, If the Man in the Moon was a Jew, 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 and a slut shouts out of her, Hey, mister, your fly is open, mister.
Mendelssohn was a Jew, and Karl Marx, and Mercadante, and Spinoza. And the Saviour was a Jew, and his father was a Jew, your God.
He had no father, says Martin. That'll do now. Drive ahead.
Who's God?
Well, his uncle was a Jew. Your God was a Jew. Christ was a Jew like me.
Gob! The citizen made a plunge back into the shop.
By Jesus, I'll brain the bloody Jew man for using the holy name. By Jesus, I'll crucify him, so I will. Give us that biscuit box here.
Stop, stop, says Joe. Gob, the devil wouldn't stop until he got hold of the bloody tin anyhow, and out with him, and little Alf hanging onto his elbow and the shouting like a stuck pig, as good as any bloody play in the Queen's Royal Theatre.
Where is he till I murder him?
And Ned and JJ paralysed with the laughing. But as luck would have it, the Jarvey got the nag's head round the other way and off with them. Hold on, citizen, says Joe. Stop! Begob, he threw his hand and made a swipe and let fly. Mercy of God, the sun was in his eyes, or he'd have left him for dead. Gob, he near sent it into the county Longford. The bloody nag took fright, and the old mongrel after the car like bloody hell, and all the populace shouting and laughing, and the old tin box clattering along the street. You never saw the like of it in all your born puff. The Jarvey saved his life by furious driving, as sure as God made Moses. What? Oh, Jesus, he did, and he let a volley of olds after him.
Did I kill him or what?
And he's shouting to the bloody dog,
After him, Gary, after him, boy.
and the last we saw was the bloody car round in the corner, and old Sheep's face on it gesticulating, and the bloody mongrel after it with his lugs back for all he was bloody well worth to tear him limb from limb. When lo, there came about them all a great brightness, and they beheld the chariot wherein he stood ascend to heaven. And they beheld him in the chariot, clothed upon in the glory of the brightness, having raiment as of the sun, fair as the moon, and terrible that for awe they durst not look upon him. And there came a voice out of heaven calling, Elijah, Elijah. And he answered with a main cry, Abba Adonai. And they beheld him, even him, Ben Bloom, Elijah, amid clouds of angels ascend to the glory of the brightness at an angle of 45 degrees over Donahoo's in Little Green Street, like a shot off a shovel.
Awake, men of Erin, the long night is ended. The first golden gleam of the morning has come. Voices long sundered in concord are blended. High hopes are surging in hearts that were numb. On for a nation's right, on to that noble fight. Leap from your sleep at the call of the dawn. Win back your own again, tear off the thraldom chain. On the war cry is Sinn Féin on. There in the land that is liberty's altar, there and there only the battle must be. Think of the prize and your heart will not falter. Think of the future when Ireland is free. On for a nation's right, on to that noble fight. Leap from your sleep at the call of the dawn. Win back your own again, tear off the thraldom chain. On the war cry is Sinn Féin on.
It's after midnight. Having met at the lying-in hospital, Bloom and Stephen Dedalus have spent some time in Bella Cohen's brothel and a cabman's shelter in downtown Dublin. Bloom has invited Stephen to come to his home on Dublin's north side.
What parallel courses did Bloom and Stephen follow returning?
Starting united, both at normal walking pace from Beresford Place, they followed in the order named Lower and Middle Gardner Streets and Mountjoy Square West. Then at reduced pace, each bearing left Gardner's Place by an inadvertence as far as the farther corner of Temple Street, then at reduced pace with interruptions of halt, bearing right Temple Street North as far as Hardwick Place. Approaching disparate at relaxed walking pace, they crossed both the circus before George's Church diametrically, the chord in any circle being less than the arc which it subtends.
Of what did the duumvirate deliberate during their itinerary?
Music, literature, Ireland, Dublin, Paris, friendship, woman, prostitution, diet, the influence of gaslight or the light of arc and glow lamps on the growth of adjoining paraheliotropic trees, exposed corporation emergency dust buckets, the Roman Catholic Church, ecclesiastical celibacy, the Irish nation, Jesuit education, careers, the study of medicine, the past day, the maleficent influence of the pre-Sabbath, Stephen's collapse.
Did Bloom discover common factors of similarity between their respective like and unlike reactions to experience?
Well, both were sensitive to artistic impressions, musical in preference to plastic or pictorial. Both preferred a continental to an insular manner of life, a cisatlantic to a transatlantic place of residence. Both, indurated by early domestic training and an inherited tenacity of heterodox resistance, profess their disbelief in many orthodox religious, national, social, ethical doctrines. Both admitted the alternately stimulating and obtunding influence of heterosexual magnetism.
Were their views on some points divergent?
Stephen dissented openly from Bloom's views on the importance of dietary and civic self-help, while Bloom dissented tacitly from Stephen's views on the eternal affirmation of the spirit of man in literature.
Was there one point on which their views were equal and negative?
The influence of gaslight or electric light on the growth of adjoining paraheliotropic trees.
What act did Bloom make on their arrival at their destination?
Well, at the house steps of the fourth of the equidifferent uneven numbers, number 7 Eccles Street, he inserted his hand mechanically into the back pocket of his trousers to obtain his latch key.
Was it there?
It was in the corresponding pocket of the trousers, which he had worn on the day but one preceding.
Why was he doubly irritated?
Because he had forgotten, and because he remembered that he had reminded himself twice not to forget.
What were then the alternatives before the premeditatedly, respectively and inadvertently keyless couple?
To enter or not to enter. To knock or not to knock.
Bloom's decision?
A stratagem. Resting his feet on the dwarf wall, he climbed over the area railings, compressed his hat on his head, grasped 2 points at the lower union of rails and stiles, lowered his body gradually by its length of 5 feet 9 inches and a half to within 2 feet 10 inches of the area of pavement, and allowed his body to move freely in space by separating himself from the railings and crouching in preparation for the impact of the fall.
Did he fall?
By his body's known weight of 11 stone and 4 pounds in avoirdupois measure, as certified by the graduated machine for periodical self-weighing in the premises of Francis Friedman, pharmaceutical chemist of 19 Frederick Street North, on the last feast of the Ascension, to wit, the 12th day of May of the bisextile year, 1904 of the Christian era, Jewish era 5664, Mohammedan era 1322, Golden number 5, Epact 13, Solar Cycle 9, Dominican letters CB, Roman Indiction 2, Julian period 6617, MCMIV.
Did he rise uninjured by concussion?
Regaining new stable equilibrium, he rose uninjured, though concussed by the impact, raised the latch of the area door by the exertion of force at its freely moving flange, and by leverage of the first kind applied at its fulcrum, gained retarded access to the kitchen through the sub-adjacent scullery. Ignited a lucifer match by friction, set free inflammable coal gas by turning on the vent cock, lit a high flame which, by regulating, he reduced to a quiescent candescence and lit finally a portable candle.
What discrete succession of images did Stephen, meanwhile, perceive?
Reclined against the area railings, he perceived through the transparent kitchen panes a man regulating a gas flame of 14 CP, a man lighting a candle of 1 CP, a man removing in turn each of his 2 boots, a man leaving the kitchen holding a candle.
Did the man reappear elsewhere?
After a lapse of 4 minutes, the glimmer of his candle was discernible through the semi-transparent, semicircular glass fanlight over the hall door. The hall door turned gradually on its hinges. In the open space of the doorway, the man reappeared without his hat, with his candle.
Did Stephen obey his sign?
Yes. Entering softly, he helped to close and chain the door and followed softly along the hallway the man's back and listed feet and lighted candle, past a lighted crevice of doorway on the left and carefully down a turning staircase of more than 5 steps into the kitchen of Bloom's house.
What did Bloom do?
He extinguished the candle by a sharp expiration of breath upon its flame, drew 2 spoon-seat deal chairs to the hearthstone, One for Stephen, with its back to the area window, the other for himself, when necessary, knelt on one knee, composed in the grate a pyre of cross-laid resin-tipped sticks and various coloured papers and irregular polygons of best Abram coal at 21 shillings a ton from the yard of Messrs. Flower, and M. Donald of 14 Delire Street kindled it at 3 projecting points of paper, with one ignited lucifer match, thereby releasing the potential energy contained in the fuel by allowing its carbon and hydrogen elements to enter into free union with the oxygen of the air.
Now, what did Bloom see on the range?
On the right, smaller hob, a blue enamelled saucepan. On the left, larger hob, a black iron kettle.
What did Bloom do at the range?
He removed the saucepan to the left hob, rose and carried the iron kettle to the sink in order to tap the current by turning the faucet to let it flow.
Did it flow?
Yes. From Roundwood Reservoir in County Wicklow of a cubic capacity of 2,400 million gallons, percolating through a subterranean aqueduct of filter mains of single and double pipage, constructed at an initial plant cost of £5 per linear yard, by way of the Dargle, Rathdown, Glen of the Downs, and Callow Hill to the 26-acre reservoir at Stillorgan, a distance of 22 statute miles, and thence through a system of relieving tanks by a gradient of 250 feet to the city boundary of Eustace Bridge, Upper Leeson Street, though from prolonged summer drought and daily supply of 12.5 million gallons, the water had fallen below the sill of the overflow weir, for which reason the borough surveyor and waterworks engineer Mr. Spencer Harty, CE, on the instructions of the Waterworks Committee, had prohibited the use of municipal water for purposes other than those of consumption, envisaging the possibility of recourse being had to the impotable water of the Grand and Royal Canals as in 1893. Particularly as the South Dublin Guardians, notwithstanding the ration of 15 gallons per day per pauper supplied through a 6-inch meter, had been convicted of a wastage of 20,000 gallons per night by a reading of their meter on the affirmation of the law agent of the corporation, Mr. Ignatius Rice, solicitor, thereby acting to the detriment of another section of the public, self-supporting taxpayers, solvent, sound.
Now, what in water did Bloom, a water lover, drawer of water, water carrier, returning to the range, admire?
Its universality, its democratic equality and constancy to its nature in seeking its own level, its vastness in the ocean of Mercator's projection, its unplumbed profundity in the Sundam Trench of the Pacific exceeding 8,000 fathoms, the restlessness of its waves and surface particles visiting in turn all points of its seaboard, the independence of its units, the variability of states of sea, its hydrostatic quiescence in calm, its hydrokinetic turgidity in neap and spring tides, its subsidence after devastation, its sterility in the circumpolar ice caps, Arctic and Antarctic, its climatic and commercial significance, its preponderance of 3-to-1 over the dry land of the globe, its indisputable hegemony extending in square leagues over all the region below the subequatorial Tropic of Capricorn, the multisecular stability of its primeval basin, its luteofulvous bed, its capacity to dissolve and hold in solution all soluble substances, including millions of tons of the most precious metals, its slow erosions of peninsulas and islands, its persistent formation of homothetic islands, peninsulas, and downward trending promontories, its alluvial deposits, its weight and volume and density, its imperturbability in lagoons and highland tarns, its gradation of colours in the torrid and temperate and frigid zones, its vehicular ramifications in continental lake-contained streams and confluent ocean-flowing rivers with their tributaries, and transoceanic currents, Gulf Stream, north and south, equatorial courses, its violence in seaquakes, waterspouts, artesian wells, eruptions, torrents, eddies, freshets, spates, ground swells, watersheds, water partings, geysers, cataracts, whirlpools, maelstroms, inundations, deluges, cloudbursts, its vast circumterrestrial ahorizontal curve, its secrecy in springs and latent humidity, revealed by rhabdomantic or hygrometric instruments and exemplified by the well by the hole in the wall at Ashtown Gate, saturation of air, distillation of dew, the simplicity of its composition, 2 constituent parts of hydrogen with 1 constituent part of oxygen, its healing virtues, its buoyancy in the waters of the Dead Sea, its persevering penetrativeness in runnels, gullies, inadequate dams, leaks on shipboard, its properties for cleansing, quenching thirst and fire, nourishing vegetation, its infallibility as paradigm and paragon, its metamorphoses as vapor, mist, cloud, rain, sleet, snow, hail, its strength in rigid hydrants, its variety of forms in lochs and bays and gulfs and bights and guts and lagoons and atolls and archipelagos and sounds and fjords and minches and tidal estuaries and arms of sea, its solidity in glaciers, icebergs, ice flows, its docility in working hydraulic mill wheels, turbines, dynamos, electric power stations, bleachworks, tanneries, scotch mills, its utility in canals, rivers, if navigable, floating and graving docks, its potentiality derivable from harnessed tides or watercourses falling from level to level, its submarine fauna and flora, an acoustic, photophobe, numerically, if not literally, the inhabitants of the globe, its ubiquity as constituting 90% of the human body, the noxiousness of its effluvia in lacustrine marshes, pestilential fens, faded flower water, stagnant pools in the waning moon.